What's up, everybody? It's Andrea. Today, we love to see Troi meeting a nice guy for once. Geordi is the perfect ambassador as a differently abled person, and we ask the question, would you want to live on this colony and work in your zone of genius? Stick with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking Season 5, Episode 13, The Masterpiece Society. This episode was written by James Caan and Adam Belanoff and directed by Weinrich Kolb. While the crew of the Enterprise saves an isolated, genetically engineered society from immediate destruction, the cultural contamination resulting from their interaction may still ultimately doom the colony. What are your initial thoughts on this episode?
So I remember this one being the one where Troi falls in love with this xenophobic man who is a great match for her. And I just feel like after last week's just traumatic episode where Troi is sexually assaulted in her mind, oh my gosh, does she need this? Does she need a reminder that not all men are scum? Which would probably be one of my takeaway messages from last week's episode is like, I just hate all men, even though it's not all men. It was literally one dude, but it was so horrendous. It was so horrendous, right? But just this nice reminder that like, not only is this not an all men type of thing, but there are also some really great, amazing people out there. And this guy is just so great for her. And I was really, really looking forward to this episode where Troi finds love and not just assault. What about you?
Yeah, it's nice to see Troi having a positive interaction with the male that she doesn't already know aboard the Enterprise.
Yeah.
I only have had a passing memory of this episode, but I do remember it being a good one. I often confuse this episode with season 3, episodes 2, Ensigns of Command, where Data has to move the colony of humans from the incoming Shellyak destruction. Yeah, where the guy's like, my grandfather's buried on that mountain. And somebody's like, well, who's going to bury you? Like, if we're not all here. Like, I often like conflate the two episodes. But this
I just rolled my eyes so hard at that guy.
You did.
I'm still irritated by that whole
God, that guy was a dummy.
Whole concept of, I know they're all going to try to come and kill us, but we've got sticks and rocks. We'll be fine.
And pride. Yeah, like, okay. But I will say that episode feels very season 3, like they're just kind of coming out of the shitty stuff. And this is way more like centered and solid. Yeah. It's a really, really cool episode. I remember being psyched to watch it, especially after we had to break down last week's very appropriately titled Violations, where it was like, it was a violation to the crew. It was a violation to us having to watch this. Like, this is just like regular, good old fashioned Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yes. Yeah. This is like best of TNG type of stuff right here. It
really is. It really is. This is like the bedrock upon which those like more memorable episodes are built on, where you have ones like this that are maybe not the most memorable, but like just really, really solid, good stuff. By the way, how freaking cool was their intro? The Enterprise has been diverted to the Moab sector to track a stellar core fragment of a disintegrated neutron star and monitor this planetary disruption that it may cause. And we have this scene where we've got this blue-white, like stellar core fragment is kind of like traveling.
Like this giant orb.
Yes, and the Enterprise is like traveling parallel to it, because usually you see like a planet that's stationary and then the Enterprise is just orbiting. But like this one is like they're both traveling. Like, how cool is that?
Everything about this is cool. Like the fragment of a neutron star. What? And that is flying, right? And it's flying through space, and they're just tracking it to see. They know it's going to cause all these earthquakes and stuff on whatever planets it passes. So they're just following along to get some scanner data and see how big the earthquakes are. And I just was like, this is a really cool mission. Like, it's pretty safe. We're not doing black clusters or anything that's going to suck you in and blow up the ship. You just have to look at it. You just look at it. Stay at a reasonable distance and just look at it. And I thought, this is my kind of mission.
Yes, no imminent destruction. Yeah.
At least not for the Enterprise this time. No, we have no warships about, no hidden Ferengi or Romulans.
It's just
jumping
scientific
from behind the star.
Exploration.
Yes, which apparently is the mission of the Enterprise. So it was very, very cool. But there's a problem. We find out about 10 seconds into the episode, Riker's like, Captain, there's a problem. There is which I put in my notes, there's a problem. And then Riker's like, there's a problem, which I thought was really funny. There is a human colony hidden away on one of the planets that this core fragment is passing by called Moab 4. And everyone's like, what? What are you talking about? Human colony? How is there a human colony there? And they're trying to figure this out. Was there a ship that crashed recently or something like that? And they're like, no, I mean, it kind of looks like it's been here for a while, but it's definitely in the cut. Like, and they're not trying to communicate with us. And they're like, okay, well, Worf, check the scanners, check the sensors, whatever. And Geordi's like, they do have an array, so they can hear us, but the array is like really old. It's like some old technology. So they're like, okay, this is kind of weird. So then Captain Picard tells Worf, use the lower bands. In my mind, the like old school technology of
like
communication.
Radio.
Yeah, like bust out the ham radio because the cell phone's not working, whatever. So he busts out the ham radio and then he's like, all right, the channel is open. And Picard's like, this is Captain Picard. Your planet's going to be destroyed by this star that's heading towards you. Get out of there, And then finally they respond. And we see this very handsome, put together man named Aaron Connor, who's like, hello, I am on this colony. The only reason I answered is because you said there's danger. But not really a fan of talking to you right now. So can we just make this real short? And Picard's like, you're all gonna die. Get out of there. And Connor's like, no, we'll be fine. Our biodome can withstand earthquakes of up to 8.7 on the Richter scale, so we'll be just fine. And Data's like, this is gonna be way more than that. It's gonna be enough to destroy every structure in your entire dome. Like that planet's gonna be crumbled pretty hard. And then they're like, ruh-roh. And so then Connor's like, well, even if we wanted to let you come and try to help us, our environment is completely sealed. No one in, no one out. And I just love this little smirk that Picard has on his face where he's like, we have the technology to transport through a little biodome. We can do that. And Aaron's like, that's amazing. In that case, come on down.
Yes. A couple of things I had where, first of all, Aaron Connor is the least Star Trek-y name I've heard so far. It's just the most like regular name.
The opposite of Berlinghoff Rasmussen is Aaron
that guy.
Connor. It's like John Doe is basic, but we already had it. John
really
Doe.
is Aaron Connor.
Yeah.
Gave me shades of Terminator.
Totally.
But whatever. Maybe it's Sarah Connor's like great grandson.
Who's super boring compared to her.
So yeah, he's like, we're an isolationist colony. Like we don't interact with other life, which like if they've interacted with the Yulians, they're like, I could see why they wouldn't want to interact with anybody else. And so when Picard does say like, we have matter transport technology, we can go right through the sealed environment. I love Aaron's face. He's like, through material? And I thought, what a wonderful little bit of storytelling in just the first 2 minutes of this episode. We already know so much about this colony just on this interaction alone. Very antiquated technology. They're isolationists. They live in a sealed dome, no one in, no one out. And they've never so much as heard of a transporter. So it's like, wow, you guys, like, we already know so much about you with so little information. This is what great writing does.
Yes. There. I think you're absolutely right. I think this, just what you just said, is what makes this episode so masterful. And it's what makes the whole episode so freaking solid. The fact that they did this much world building in a 2-minute opening sequence. It's something they could not have pulled off in season 1 because they were still kind of getting their legs. Or even back with the Shellyak, it took a while to get into that story. To be like, what's going on? Who are the Shellyak? Like that took several minutes to get through all that to be like, oh, now we kind of get it. But this, in the first 2 minutes, so many things. You're totally hooked. You get it. The world building is beautiful. It's masterfully done. And I really liked how, like you said, how Connor was really impressed by their technology because I felt like he should be impressed. Like no one's ever impressed by anybody's technology because they're just like, technology, schmechnology, whatever. But I feel like it's kind of like Harry Potter, right? Where Harry was so impressed by magic, as he should be. Like there should be some stuff you've never seen before that actually shocks you. And you go, what? I didn't know that was possible. So I really like that. I really like that bit of change because we as the audience are always impressed by all this crazy cool technology they have. So it's nice to see somebody on screen kind of mirror that delight and surprise.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And like, it's just really wonderful, like subtle writing where we get so much from so little and we can create like such a picture. Now, Aaron does invite, a few people to come down and have a little intergalactic chit chat about what's happening with the stellar core fragment. And Aaron's chief of staff is like the only character I don't like in this whole episode. He's such a caricature of like a deeply untrusting person. Like he only has one face and it's a grumpy face. And he's like
the same exact character we had in that episode First Contact, where they went down to the planet and they like modified their bodies to match the aliens or whatever. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And the president of the world or whatever was like, yeah, there are aliens out there. We should totally contact them. And his second in command was like, no, they'll ruin our entire society.
Yeah, the one who looked like a Nazi doctor with the little glasses. Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
And that guy. This is kind of like a common trope, I feel like, is the second in command who's just very anti everything and doesn't really have a lot of dynamic parts to their character, or
and
really
not
more
a lot of
reasons than
why.
One.
Yeah, not a lot of reasons why. Now, you know, Troi and Riker and a few other members of the UA team come down and we learn more about this society. So it's the ancestors did come from Earth, but they're a genetically engineered society who are selectively bred to ensure, in air quotes, like perfect specimens. And one of the people who comes down is Geordi. So they have their first interaction with a blind person who was born with this like disability and whose life has just as much meaning, if not more so, you know. And Aaron says, you know, I've been bred to fill the specific role of prime minister. Like I was born to lead my people. And it actually created this really great like discourse between the Enterprise crew and this like utopic society down on the planet, where they're like, don't you get like bored knowing like what is to come? Like you were born to do this job. Your spouse was born to be your spouse. You know, everything was sort of planned ahead of time. That leaves no room for like spontaneity. Does that not create some sort of boredom? And he was like, no, actually, imagine like how many incredibly talented like poets or painters or whatever there are in your world who never get to realize their potential and who might waste their life as like let's say a simple laborer, but like have this like artistic ability that like never ever gets to like really be fully realized,
or even like vice versa, right? Like that they're going into art because their family were artists and their parents were artists and their parents wanted them to be artists, but really they wanted to be a laborer. They like working with their hands and they want to build stuff. That's what they want to do. It's like I had a question for you about this as well. As they were having this discussion, and Connor was saying every single member of their society, and it's been 8 generations of this, every single member of their society has been bred at the DNA level to do exactly what they do, the way they do it, and to be the best in their society at it. I thought like there's really something attractive in that idea of not missing your purpose, being bred for a purpose. And to me, the way when he described it, I was like, yeah, it doesn't sound confining at all. It sounds like you get to fully express your greatest zone of genius at all times. And my question to you was, if this was possible, if we had some technology that could like matrix upload, you know, this type of life for you, is this something you would go for?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Here's why. Because there's a lot of stability and safety in that. And stability and safety are very sexy, especially if you've gone through some stuff that is very destabilizing in your life, as I have had the displeasure of going through, where I'm like, that sort of stability, that safety is very, very attractive. But my question is this: we feel our purpose changes throughout our life. You know, when I was in my 20s, I had a very different purpose than when I did in my 30s, and I'm about to go into my 40s. And, you know, I often would talk to my students about like the different jobs and careers I've had. And they're like, oh my God, you've done a little bit of everything. And I was like, I really have. And it's been really fulfilling and really great for me to do that. So, you know, I don't know if I would I would want to go for that, but like, I would have some questions like, do I get to express another zone of genius like 10 years from now? Like when I discover a new passion or a new like wonderful thing that I really want to do? Or am I sort of locked in? Because then that would feel really confining. But you're right. Like on the show, they don't describe it in any sort of terms that feels confining. I don't know. How about you?
I really don't know, because I feel like I've spent an inordinate amount of my life looking for, my passion, trying to live out of my zone of genius. And as you said, it's more of a journey than a destination. So there are just little pockets of genius throughout and little pockets of experiences that I love throughout. At one point, you and I were rock climbing all the time. You introduced me to that particular sport, and I absolutely loved being a rock climber. I haven't touched a rock in like years, but like that identity that I wore for a while was really fun. And I don't feel like I need to pick that mantle back up again, but I feel like a more well-rounded person for having experienced it. So I feel like I spend a ton of my time trying to figure out what is my zone of genius? What is my purpose? What should I be doing here? And at the same time, that journey of exploring things is really satisfying and really fun and really exciting because I'm like, oh, I'm super good at this. Who knew I was good at archery? Wow, I still suck at bowling, like whatever. But there is something really, really attractive of being able to fully express yourself your whole life, being able to do something that is so deeply satisfying to you that you absolutely enjoy, you love, and you're really, really good at, and you were made for it. There is something really attractive about that idea. So I really don't know. I feel like my answer is totally based on the experiences that I've had in a reality that's not that, right? It's like, well, having experienced this, now I can look at that. But if that was my only experience, I don't know. I guess it would be just as normal as going through your life experiencing different things is for us. So I don't know. I just had that thought like, this sounds really interesting. Like, would this be a thing that you or I would do? And I don't have an answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would really be attracted to that idea and be like, because there are so many things that I really love doing, but I'm looking at pivoting my career away from teaching into more of a creative field. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish there were just like job opportunities out there for me all over the place to do this. And in reality, there probably are. I just don't see them, or I don't know where to look. Right. But like, just imagining like how nice that would feel to go into a job every day that I like am obsessed with. It's like, oh God, that sounds so good. That
exactly.
So good.
But like, it sounds really good because I have experienced the opposite of that.
Not. Yeah.
And that's why it's like, oh, that sounds good. It's that opposite word we learned back in that episode with Data and his little mini me. It's like that opposite word where we're like, we just want the exact opposite of coming to a job where you're like so frustrated and like just want to leave the second your car hits the parking lot. You want to turn around and go home. Like we want the opposite. But everyone here has been bred to do exactly what they want. Martin, who is the second in command, he's been bred to be the interpreter of the founder's desires. So he's kind of like the judge of the planet, and he makes sure that everyone's still on the group plan. And Connor also explains that not only is there society bred to fit their exact roles, but it's also in this beautiful equilibrium with their environment. They have a homeostasis where they're a part of the environment and the environment is part of them, which is beautiful, especially seeing and contrasting the way that we're totally destroying the Earth. Like with this society where you're at one with your surroundings, where it's sustainable, is just like, way to go, 1991 writers.
Yep. It feels a little bit Avatar-y in that way, where it's like we are one with the environment and the environment is one with us. And it's like, hell yeah.
Yes. Not Avatar, The Last Airbender, the other Avatar. Yeah. It feels very like connected to, although I guess they both kind of connect to the environment in a way. So, which is just so beautiful. So that's why they're like not wanting to leave. And again, comparing this to the episode with the Shellyak, that was just stupid. They should have just got off that planet because the Shellyak were going to come and eradicate all of them. But in this case, you're like, oh, I get it. Like you're physically connected to your environment and you can't just kind of like scoop it up and place it somewhere else. So you'll leave if you absolutely have to, but it has to be like the very last, like we are imminently going to die in the next 13 seconds. Other than that, we're going to fight for this home world. And we think we can do it because we've got the technology. We just need to like boost it. We need a little more power and a little more tools. So this is like the first time I think in all of these TNG episodes where I've been like, yeah, maybe you should fight for your home. All the other times I'm like, leave, just leave, get out of there.
The Shellyak was like, just get the F out of there. Like it's just some buildings. Whereas with this planet, it's very much like their identity. And Geordi does get to meet Hannah, which is one of the colony scientists. And she was bred, of course, to be like one of the brightest minds of her generation, or the brightest mind in her generation, where she's the she's the colony's like chief engineer, you know, her physics work and all this stuff is, she's their top one. Right. And so Geordi's like, cool, another like super genius I get to work with. This is awesome. Riker's like, cool. Sounds like everybody's kind of got everything in place. We'll be back later. And I love that Troy's like, I think I'd like to stick around a little bit longer. And she starts doing the pat down. We're like, I think I might have left my keys somewhere. I'm going to just hang out a little longer, you know. And Aaron is like, I would also like you to stick around a little longer. Maybe you can help me find my contact lenses that I dropped somewhere. And Riker's like, okay, and gives them the knowing look. And
you guys enjoy your coffee. One to beam up.
Yeah. And I do like that Aaron and Troi get to know each other more. And there's some really just like lovely flirting where she's like, this place is so utopic. Oh my God. Like if only you had a hotel here, I would come and have my next vacation here. And he'd be like, well, as the prime minister, I'm going to have to order them to start building a hotel. And I was like, I can make that happen for you. Yes. I was like snapping at their like cute, just very sweet and cute flirting. Yeah.
One of my favorite dates, I think, has been one of my favorite series of dates has been all the dates between, Aaron Connor and Troi, which were, you know, I mean, maybe they weren't officially dates. They were just getting to know whatever, but they have just been so normal. Like, I think the last time I was just so pleased with just these normal dates was with, in the game with, Wesley Crusher and Ashley Judd, who I'm forgetting her character's name. But like, that's like the last time where I remember just being like, oh, this is so sweet.
Just like sweet, normal and
just normal. Like, there's no creepy Devanani Rawl rolling their fingers through Troy's hair and her quarters while she's like, please leave my quarters. Like, there's nothing weird or creepy or off or awkward. It's just normal. It's easy. It's natural. It's organic. And I was here for it. I just was like smiling ear to ear. And I was like, yay, Troi met a nice guy. I'm so happy for her.
Especially after her last week's adventures with being assaulted by Jev. It's like, here is the kind of man that like we want her to meet, you know, just like sweet, interested to get to know her, just enjoying themselves in each other's company. Just enjoying themselves in each other's company, having just smiling ear to ear for just having the pleasure to be around each other. That is what I'm here to see. Now, meanwhile, Hannah and Geordi are putting their heads together and coming up with a plan.
Did you like those panels? Did you notice this time? They were so cool. They had like the waves and stuff. I was
like, when they said physics and I saw the panel, I was like, these totally like check out. This looks like a physics display. Yeah. Hannah is like, I think we have a plan, but I'm going to need to go up to the Enterprise. And Martin is like, this is not in the rule book. You can't go. This is all your fault. Everybody leave now. And it's like, okay, Martin, I need you to stop freaking out. And Aaron is like, if this is what it takes to save the entire colony for one person to beam away, then go. And I love that Troi this time is like, I actually am going to go up because I need to talk to Picard. And she's like, you know, it may be harder than you think to convince the colonists to evacuate. Like, this is like their identity.
Right. Because Picard's like, all right, how long is it going to take? We need to just like get him off the planet and keep it moving. We'll find another place. Yeah. And Troy's like, no, that's not going to work in this case. Like, I don't know if we can. I don't even know if that's possible to convince them. And she says some of them are willing to die rather than leave their homes because this is it's not just part of their identity. They live as one with their environment. So it is part of their existence. So Picard's like,
great.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's just help.
Dang it.
Geordi and Hannah figure it out. Right. And I love the whole conversation between Troi and Picard. It just was really civil and reasonable and like understanding. I thought that was beautiful. And at this point, it's been 3 days that Hannah and Geordi have been working on this problem and they're no closer to a solution. And now we have 48 hours before the fragment shows up, like comes near enough to the planet to cause problems. And I do love that the timeline is very sensible here. Like when they showed up, it was 6 days. They've been on the thing for 3 days. Now there's 2 days. Like this makes sense. Usually when they do timelines, they just throw out random numbers. Like, do you remember that episode with Sarjenka and there was another earthquake or whatever? And they were like,
pen pals.
Yeah, pen pals. And it was something where they were like, it's been 3. They were like, oh, let's go to this planet. It's like 2 hours away. And then they were like 3 weeks later. And you're like, wait, what's going on? And like the timeline was all wacky.
Yeah, this actually makes like realistic sense.
This whole episode makes realistic sense, which feels to me as a viewer super cohesive. And it makes me feel like safe. And that's what helps me like really bear down and get into the story, is because I'm not going like, wait a minute, what? Now there's only 10 seconds. What happened?
Yes. It's, the other thing too that I really love is that we are so used to Geordi trying this and that, and then at the last second, like having the answer, right?
Yes.
And like, it looks like Geordi has solved everything in like 2 minutes flat. I love that him and Hannah have been slaving away at this for 3 days and still are no closer to a solution. It's like, okay, so it's not just us. Like Geordi also.
He's also a human.
He's also human, and he's not going to find the answer in like 10 seconds, And he does get really tired, and he's like, oh, like I need to close my eyes for a second. So he takes off his visor, and it prompts this really great conversation with Hannah regarding the value of life with disabilities. And he describes how his visor works. And, she says something along the lines of like, the founders wanted us to never have to like live a life encumbered with like a disability.
To never have to suffer.
Yes. And Geordi's like, what gave them the right to determine whether my life should have meaning or not? And I was like, yeah, the amount of times that Geordi has saved the entire crew and the ship at the last second as a person who is blind, it's like the man has saved so many lives so many times over and over again at the last second. Had he been born on the colony, he wouldn't have been born at all because of this.
Yeah. And I do love how this, one of my favorite things about Geordi as a character is that him being blind is such an afterthought. Like it's a part of who he is, of course, but he doesn't lead with it. Hi, I'm Geordi, the blind guy, right? Like he doesn't lead. It's just a part of who he is. Who cares?
Yes.
And just like who cares? And if anything, it comes to the rescue many, 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 many times, because he can see infrared and all this other crazy stuff that he can see, which is super cool. And so I really appreciate the normalization of physical differences that Geordi brings, because it does give opportunities for people to talk about disabilities and what life's like with a disability. But at the same time, like, and I've said this before, Geordi doesn't have a disability. He has a different ability. Like a disability would be like if he couldn't do something that other people could do, but it's the exact opposite. Geordi can do things that other people cannot do. He can see things that no one else can see. He can see freaking cracks in a biodome. He can see heat signatures and all kinds of random stuff that he can see. Of course, he does have to have his visor on. So yeah, if he doesn't have his visor, then yes, he's at a lack. Like he can't see as much as everybody else.
He's at a disadvantage.
He's at a disadvantage. Yeah, but with his visor on, he's like way more advantaged. So I just appreciate that about his character in general. And I do love this conversation a lot as well. And I like how Hannah's just like, she's just genuinely like curious, because she's never seen someone who's blind in her whole entire life. Never. And then, Geordi also asked this question, who are they to decide whether or not I had something to contribute? So it wasn't just, should he be here or does he have value, but also like, I can contribute to society just as much as anybody else. And it was just such a powerful statement, because that's true of everybody. Like, who's to say that anybody can't contribute for the reason of their, abilities or gender or sexual orientation or ethnicity or home country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore you can't contribute. It's like, you never know who's the person who's going to be who saves the day.
You never know.
Diversity of thought. So I thought it was great. And so Geordi's explaining how his visor works to her, because she's another fellow scientist, right? So he's like, well, it sends pulses and it does this and it does that. And she's asking all these good questions like, well, how does it not overwhelm your senses? How does it this? How does it that? And he's like, oh, well, it converts this information and it buffers it and it stores it and it does pulses. And then he stops and he's like, pulses. That's the answer. That's how we're going to move this core fragment out of the way. And they both are so excited. They're like, I think we actually might have a solution. And Geordi's like, this is perfect. Hannah's like, what's perfect? And he's like, a blind man is the one who's going to have technology from his visor that's going to save your planet where I never would have existed. It is beautifully ironic.
Yeah, it's ironic that a device for someone who never would have existed in the colony could be the thing that saved them. It's like, I love the irony of that. Now, on the surface, Aaron is showing Troi the sights. They attend a beautiful piano concerto in the park where this young man is playing Chopin's Prelude in E minor, which is a very, very beautiful piece of music. And they're interrupted by a small earthquake. And it's like, it's starting. Beginning. It's starting. Now, it's nice to see that Troi is enjoying her time with Aaron, so much so that the next morning she is still there. And I was like, ooh, okay. Like it for me, it triggered the very like Saved by the Bell, like woo, like sound effect that you have like the little teens do. And it's like, oh, she was there the next morning.
Yeah, when they started making out the night before, and you're like, well, we know where this is gonna go. And she's all like, no, this isn't a good idea. This is a mistake. And Aaron's like,
such a mistake.
It's such a mistake. Let's do this mistake even better.
Yeah. Let's mistake even harder. Yeah.
Seriously. And I was like, honestly, if I was Troi, I would have done the same thing. Same thing.
100%. Like half of the thrill is knowing that it's wrong anyway. It's like that you go, girl. Now
I was like, this is Connor's version of screw the Prime Directive. This is his version of it. It's like literally screw the Prime Directive. And honestly, I'm here for it. I'm like,
I'm here for it too. I'm here for Troy's like just having a wonderful, healthy relationship. But the next morning she has this really difficult conversation where she becomes upset. She's like, I know I can't stay. You know, you can't leave. I could really fall in love with you. And this is wrong for both of our cultures. Like, is Martin going to accept a half beta Z into the gene pool? Like, that's not going to be a thing. And
we know how the story ends. We know how the story ends. And it ends with us not being together. So let's just cut it off now while it's like small, while it's like a small love, before I'm just totally obsessed with you. And then we have to tear each other apart, later on, which is.
Yeah, we have to tear ourselves apart, which is really so traumatic. Yeah. Now, Geordi and Hannah show up just at the right time to interrupt this convo. And they're like, we think we have a plan, but we need to bring down like 50 engineers to install these like shield generators and get everything up and running, which they eventually agreed to. And my first thought was, you guys have at least 50 engineers on the Enterprise? Like, why does it always fall on Geordi to do like the most menial freaking task?
Geordi, like we have a screw loose on deck 3. Yes. Corridor 5.
Yes. And he's like, I'm in the middle of lining up the isolinear chips or whatever. Or doing the Geordi maneuver to try to get people out under the blast door. And you have 49 other engineers at least.
Well, we do always see people in engineering doing things. So it makes sense that they would finally, for a change, they called other than Geordi to come down to the planet. Surprising that they weren't like, hey, Geordi, can you install these 5 shield emitters and all these power cells? By the way, you have about 3 hours. Thanks.
Actually, this is very true because we're told 1,012 personnel that are regulars aboard the ship. We only know like 8 of them. Mm-hmm. That's it. We know the main engineer, the main security guy who sucks at his job, the captain, the first
transporter chief
officer, the transporter chief for some random ass reason, Counselor Troi, and the main doctor. Those are like, yes, and Guinan, because she's actually really useful because she gives like great advice. But like we know, by my estimation right now, we know 7 people aboard 1,000. Like, I would love to know like what these other randos are doing, because it seems like those 7 people are successfully running the entire ship without anybody else's help. Every once in a blue moon, we'll see Worf has like a security team with him.
Yeah.
But like, that's not really, so it's actually nice to know. It's just Worf like this. It's basically Remember Me all over again. We only need 5 people to fly the ship the whole time. Like, we don't need to know any.
Never had any other crew members.
Just like, wait a minute, no. It's really good to know there are more.
You and me, Beverly. Why do you think there's a whole entire ship, a crew flying this ship? That's crazy.
Yeah. I know that funny. We have like 2,000 rooms aboard this ship, but that's like if we have to pick up like a colony, like this guy's colony right now. But otherwise it's just us, and it's only ever been us. Okay. Gosh. Oh, and we know Data. Like, that's really, it's like, we know at the max 10 people really well. I would really love to know more people aboard the Enterprise.
Yeah, but all right. For consistency's sake, I love getting to know better the characters we have seen for the past 5 seasons, like in this episode. I feel like I got to know Troi better, even though there's nothing new that happens with Troi where you're like, whoa, that was so revealing. But I just feel like seeing this side of her life, of her just having a cute date with a cute boy, it's just it was like a very nice slice of life. So now these 50 officers are beaming down, and Martin is not too pleased because he's like, come on, we had the whole sealed thing, no one in, no one out. And now we're just like shipping people in left and right, sending people out left and right. Yeah. And Aaron is just like, again, let me remind you that if we don't do this, we will all die. So none of our principles will matter. And I was just like, yes, why doesn't Martin understand this? Like, I get that he's not happy. Aaron's not happy either. but like you will all die. That's the other alternative. So like get it together, Martin. This is what needs to happen. I don't understand why he didn't understand. But in any case, we're back on the ship.
Like, we will all die if we don't do this. So maybe we need to do this.
So stop complaining. Like, just help it go faster. Maybe isolate your people while the 50 engineers are on the biodome so that they don't interact. Like, you come up with some solutions, Martin. Don't just be sitting there being like grumpy. Come up with some solutions so everybody could win, but we all need to live at the end of this for this to make any sense. So back on the ship, they are trying their maneuver to move this fragment, and they just need to move it 1.2 degrees, just like the littlest bit. And it takes every bit of power in the ship, including life support, to get enough energy to move this giant core fragment of this neutron star. But at the very last second, literally there are 5 seconds left before life support fails on all decks. They are able to pull it off. Geordi restores life support in the nick of time. Everyone lives, yay. And the fragment moves along. And the biodome is spared. And it was a very tense moment because I was like, seriously, I hope this doesn't like not work. Like, it needs to just work because that's not what the story's about. I don't want to see, them having to be evacuated in the end anyways. So it works. All is well. Picard tells Connor, like, hey, the whole plan worked. Like, it's good. Your biodome's safe. And then Connor's like, oh, can I talk to Hannah? And he's like, sure. Doop, doop. And they go to another visual panel in engineering. And Connor's like, well done, Hannah. When you return, we look forward to honoring you appropriately. And her huge smile just falls, completely falls. And she just walks away from that panel. Like, you can tell that she's like, I don't want to come back. She hasn't said it at this point, but you can tell she's like, I don't want to come back. Like, I just did something amazing and I kind of want to stay on the Enterprise. And that's when I was like, Rutro, Martin's really not going to like this.
Yeah. So, if he didn't like the back and forth, he's really not going to like the back and not coming forth. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So it turns out there's no injuries on the planet. There's some minor structural damage, but everything was pretty fine. And
everything's fine.
The engineers have all beamed back to the ship, and Riker and somebody else, maybe Geordi. Yeah, Riker and Geordi are on the planet and they're saying goodbye to Connor. And Connor has this really sweet thing where he's just like, can you please tell Deanna that I'm sorry that I couldn't say goodbye in person? And Riker just gives that knowing look and he's like, I'm sure she feels the same way. And it's like, oh, I love how much Riker just like cheers on Troi's happiness. Like, it just,
and vice versa. And vice versa. There isn't any, like, Riker could have a lot of feelings about this. He could be curt and brusque and abrupt with him. He could feel the competition. He could whatever. But like, they really just cheerlead each other on in their lives. And he is very sweet about it. He's like, I'm sure she would feel exactly the same way. Now, as they're getting ready to leave, another emergency strikes just at the last minute. Like, Hannah needs to work with Geordi because some sort of breach has happened. There's like some kind of a leak.
Alarms and she's like, I'm blaring. Like, I'm going to have to, what did she say? We're all going to have to evacuate anyways, if we can't fix this within some short amount of hours,
24 hours or whatever the heck. Yeah. Or 3 hours or something. And so Geordi's like, do you mind if I just stay and like help Hannah with this? And Riker's like, for sure. I'll go back to the Enterprise. Just report when you're ready. And I like
Geordi's looking sideways at Hannah this whole time. And I was just like,
the whole time, which is actually really hard to do as an actor that has a banana clip in front of your eyes. We can't see his eyes, but we know that he's suspicious.
Somehow. How did they do that? I don't know, but you can tell.
It's like watching, to me, it's a lot like watching The Mandalorian. You never really see his face. Like, he takes off the helmet a couple of times, but Pedro Pascal does such a kick-ass job of like
emoting,
displaying emotion through a helmet. Like, you can just body language and everything. It's like, dang, I can't even see your freaking face and I can feel how you're feeling. This is artful. This is art. So Geordi does confront Hannah with the lie. He's like, my visor would have detected
closed doors, which is impressive.
Which is smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. My visor would have detected a breach if there had been one. If there had even been a hairline crack, I would have seen it. Like, why are you doing this?
And Hannah's just like, oh, your visor doesn't miss a thing, does it? Fine, I'll tell the truth. Is that what you want? Is that going to make you happy? She gets super defensive.
Yes, and then like, he goes,
you didn't know his visor could do that, did you?
He goes again, why are you doing this?
Yeah, I'm not accusing you because I could have done this in front of everybody, FYI, like 5 minutes ago. I'm doing this separately because I want to know what's up. Because I'm your friend.
And she's like, I don't want to live on the colony anymore. Like, if necessity is the mother of invention, there is no further need on this planet. So my life here is like stagnant. The technology we have, the arrays and everything are so antiquated and old because, again, like, that's the thing, is like you have to have a need in order to push technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's no need because everything is so catered, we're going stagnant, which I think is very, very valid.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wants to request asylum aboard the Enterprise, and the senior crew meets in the observation lounge. Did you notice they're sitting on the opposite side of the table? This is like in later seasons. They don't all sit at one end like they normally do. They sit on like the end closest to like the door to the bridge. I don't know if you noticed that, but I was like, ooh, what a great way to just mix it up just a tiny bit in a very, very like comfortable and well-known set.
Yeah, I did notice, but it didn't really register. It just was like, okay, they're in here talking. And what I really noticed was this, I really love this conversation between all of them of what's the right thing to do. Because
Yes.
Geordi's like, it's our policy that if someone requests asylum, we grant it. Unless they're like a criminal fleeing from the law. I think that's their only case where they're like, no, you got to face the music.
And especially as humans, they have like extra rights to do that.
Right. Because when it's like alien races, then they have to kind of take, it's the prime directive, and they have to kind of think about the alien laws and stuff like that. And it's a little more things they need to navigate politically. But because these are humans from Earth, these are Earthlings, they're like, well, you guys have the same rules and laws as us. So, they have to grant asylum. But then there's this conversation of, well, we can't though, because if one member is removed from their society, it will destabilize everything. Everything is in perfect harmony and balance. Well, not one member, but like if a handful disappears, like that throws everything off. If they have like one or two unexpected deaths, which Connor describes earlier, they've got some genetic diversity and they've got some things in place to kind of cover in those gaps. But if too many people leave, it'll destabilize their whole culture, their whole balance with their environment. Homeostasis will be thrown off completely, and they're not going to be able to adapt. So they kind of go back and forth with, what should we do? And they're like, well, we have to grant it. And they're like, but we can't grant it, but we have to. And I just thought they're really between a rock and a hard place. Like, I don't know what the right call is in the scenario. And so Picard very wisely says, all right, Troi, you need to take me to go meet with Aaron Connor. We have to talk about this kind of like leader to leader and talk about what we are both willing to do to make this like a win-win situation for as many people as we can. And so Troy's like, okay. She's like, I guess so. And then
she's not super thrilled. Yeah.
No. And then when they get in the turbo lift, she's just like, you can feel it coming off her, radiating from her, that she is feeling.
She's like, I have something to tell you.
Yeah. So she stops the turbo lift and she's like, I have to confess something. And I just thought in this scene, it is amazing how guilty Troi feels about sleeping with Connor when Riker has banged every female alien from here to Risa with no guilt whatsoever. Because why should he feel guilty? He's a grown man exercising his rights. I feel the same thing about Troi. I'm like, yeah, like it doesn't help their society, but like, why do you feel guilty? And why is it something you need to tell Picard about? Except for the fact, I guess, that if there's weird tensions between them, it might affect the negotiations or something. But like, I just was like, wow, Troi, like Riker would feel nothing in this moment. He'd be like, oh, cool, I get to go back and see the head of Angel One. Just saw her this morning. Hey, like he was like sleeping with leaders of countries, of planets, of whatever, and it was not a big deal. But Troi is feeling really uncomfortable and has a whole talk with Picard about it. And he is just really sweet and understanding. And he mentions like, the only thing he wants to know is like, are you feeling weird? Is this going to be weird for you to beam down? Like, it's not going to be good for you? And she's like, no, it's fine. And he's like, is there something between you two I should know about that's like a tension or anything that can harm the negotiations? She's like, no, I don't think so. And he's like, all right, then let's go.
Super professional. I love it. And I love that Picard has come such a ways that, in season 1, he might have reprimanded her, but now it's season 5. He knows her. He's had a million missions with her. They've almost died together like 1,000 times. He trusts her. And he's like, it could happen to anyone, which is far more valid of a reason than like the Jeb bullshit he did last week. Where he's like, any one of us could rape somebody with our mind. Like, no, that's false. Not. Yeah. Nope. So I do love that she has this moment. And the way that she says it too, it's like she's clearly like so afraid to tell him because she doesn't want to get in trouble, but that's just a little part of it. She doesn't want to disappoint him. Yeah. And like, it just really shows how high he stands in her estimation, and how high she stands in his. And she doesn't want to lose that standing with him. And I was like, oh God, I just love that so much.
It must have taken so much courage for her to admit that, because
so much courage.
I was like, ooh, you could tell how scared she was. And I was like, wow, like, it'd be easier to just say nothing. It'd be way easier to say nothing.
It really would. Now they beam down and Aaron does understand like why Hannah and the others want to leave. Like he has felt the same curiosity, the same desire to know more, but he knows that he was born to lead and he cannot leave. And so there's this like back and forth where everybody turns out like many more people than just Hannah want to leave. Right. And so it's like, damn, now we're like witnessing the end of our civilization as we know it, which is really difficult. And he does, because he's Aaron Connor and he's very sweet and he's a very good leader. He's like, Hannah, you're welcome to come home anytime. And at least Hannah's like, oh, thank God.
So before that, before they had that agreement, there was a lot of tension. Picard and Connor spoke privately and Connor was saying, if we, like, I understand where they're coming from, but if a handful of people leave, that will destabilize our entire society. Mm-hmm. And Picard says, I understand. And I cannot refuse asylum. Like I can't say no. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's go and talk to your people together. And I will strongly urge them to stay. But if they still want to leave, I can't say no. So that was kind of their compromise. So they go out to talk to the people and the people are like, Hannah is pissed and rightfully so, because they're basically telling her, you can't leave. And she's like, you can't keep me here. Like this is,
I'm a prisoner now.
Yeah. Now I'm a prisoner. You can't keep me here. And she's like, I can never go back to the naive, innocent person I was before. I know that there's more out there and I want more. And so Connor tries to come up with a compromise to her and like the angry mob at this point and says, how about you give us 6 months? 6 months to just, and she's like, what's the point of that? It's like 6 months to reconsider. And Picard chimes in like, it's a cooling off period. You've had 3 days of experience with the outside world, but this is a very small picture of what it's really like outside of your biodome. You haven't been into any other planets. You haven't really dealt with any other aliens. Maybe you've seen Worf and that's it. Like that, and they probably not even. So it's like, you don't really know what you're asking. So maybe give it some time for you to adjust to this thought. And then Hannah counters with, so you want us to stay here for 6 months while you guys pressure us into trying to stay. And I was like, ooh, that's probably
a really
true.
Good point.
Yeah, I was like, that's probably, and you see Martin in the back, like grinding his teeth. I was like, that's probably true. Even though you're saying it's a cooling off period, which is true, Martin's going to take that time to try to convince them all and pressure them all to stay. Yeah. So when the Enterprise comes back in 6 months, whoever leaves is going to feel really guilty and really bad. So I was just like, oh, this is really awkward. And so they just cannot come to a compromise. And that's when Connor finally says, all right, you can go, Hannah. Anyone who wants to go can go. And when you're ready to come home, you'll be welcome. And he doesn't say if you're ready to come home. He says when you're ready to come home, because he expects that they will find it in their hearts to want to return at some point, which we don't really know that that's true. Like once they have a taste of life outside, some of them will probably want to come home, but not all of them for sure. Some of them will want to just keep exploring. And it's clear that everything that they've built is now changing. Yeah. And Connor kind of says, like, it's really ironic because Martin was the one who warned me of this from the very beginning. When I first answered that hail, Martin says, this could happen. Our whole society could be destroyed by answering a hail. But like, my argument is your whole society was going to be destroyed by killer earthquakes. So your whole society, like the culture is being changed, but the lives are being preserved. And I think that's more important because you can make new culture. But if the lives are gone, the whole thing's gone, you know?
Totally. Now, before even that, like Troi and Aaron do say their goodbyes. And he has this kind of moment where he's like, he admits like, I did fall in love with you. And some people might say like, oh, they only knew each other for 3 days. But I'm like, 3 days is enough to fall in love with someone for sure. In my opinion and experience. And he's like, you know, what's strange is that like, there's all these like genetically bred women who are designed to be the perfect mate for me, but I fell in love with you. And then he says, perhaps it's your imperfections that make you so intriguing. And I thought, wow, thanks, buddy. Like maybe because you're so imperfect, that's why I'm interested. Like, and to say that to Troi, who is this like absolutely stunning, beautiful woman who's shown like zero imperfections at all with him. I was like, okay, wait till you meet a real woman and you're gonna be like, dear God, no. You know, so I was like, that was super backhanded. Now, as they say goodbye and beam away, we do learn that like in addition to Hannah, 22 other colonists did leave the planet, which is a lot.
It's a lot.
You know, and Picard does mull over like the Prime Directive and how like the Enterprise's presence turned out to be more of a threat to the citizens of Moab 4 than a stellar core fragment ever could have been.
Which I disagree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say false on that because the core fragment would have killed them all. The colony survived. Its survival is now going to have a different course. There is a cultural shift and a change, and they'll
adapt. They'll adapt.
They're not going to die out of hunger because the food synthesizer quit being a colonist. Like they'll find a way, you know, but it's just a different course now. So their way of life has been altered irrevocably by the Enterprise, but it would have been changed irrevocably by their complete destruction. So
correct.
Like,
yes.
Yeah. Like, would you rather preserve your culture and everybody die, or have everybody survive and your culture just be altered? Like, cool down, Martin. Go take a walk and chill the fuck out. Cause like, this is not as bad as you. All right, whatever. I was very over Martin. I was like, ugh, okay, buddy.
Yeah. And again, I was irritated by the moral of the story because that always bugs me. I feel like I don't want to be spoon-fed what you want me to think. Like that's the point of the episode. That's the point of the whole episode is to generate thoughts in my head. So
yes,
I have generated those thoughts. They have been generated. Thank you. So I just want the episode to like end in a different way. However, I did appreciate this final thought from Picard because it gave me something to completely disagree with for all the reasons you said. Living is better than dying. They did not die. So the Enterprise did not do more damage by destroying the colony. It did damage by destroying the culture, maybe, but the colony survived. And I agree. I think, of course, you're going to adapt. Like, of course, you will. That's part of being human. You will adapt. And like Geordi explained to Hannah, necessity is the mother of invention. Now you guys will adapt even better because now you've got gaps. And now you need to adapt. You haven't needed to adapt for 8 generations. Now you will find new ways and new technologies and new ways to do life, which may be even better than what you had before. So like, I think this, I mean, it's sad that you're losing 23 family members. Like that's super sad and devastating and difficult. And you'll have to like fill in all these roles now. However, I think you'll be just fine. And in the end, I think it'll be more helpful than harmful.
You know, period of growth is always preceded by a period of some level of discomfort.
Yeah.
You know, the discomfort that this colony is about to experience is going to be great. A great deal of discomfort and pain. But much like coming up with like the visor method to like move the stellar core fragment, you had to come up with something. So this, I would argue, is about to be a very exciting time in this colony's history because they're going to have a great deal of discomfort and pain, but the stuff that they're going to come up with,
innovate.
The solutions that they are going to create to get over this is going to change the course of their society forever in a really positive way. You know, there's a great deal of pain, but like, because we were missing our food synthesizer and our XYZ, our chief scientist, like we all had to pull together and like make a solution happen. You know, you have to kind of like MacGyver a solution together, which is always really exciting. So I think that they did like a great thing actually for the society, and they allowed the colonists the freedom to leave if they wanted to. So a lot of them did. And I was like, wow, what they're about to experience is also going to be a great deal of discomfort because like Picard said, you've only seen like 3 days worth of like interacting with a new race, you know, like even though they're both humans, but like pretty much, you know,
I mean,
like
8 generations of being separated. You're pretty much a totally different thing now.
Yeah, no, it's called an allopatric speciation, where it's like you're separated by some physical barrier. And we learned about this in a lot of bio, where like a mountain will grow between like where this colony of flowers has been or something, or exactly. And so they're separate enough that they don't cross pollinate and cross reproduce. So like one flower will grow like this kind of adaptation, other one will like turn a different color. And after enough time has passed, even though they came from the same root, they're totally different. So that allopatric speciation is exactly like what happened with this colony. They isolated for 8 generations. Now they're completely different from these other humans. And what they're about to experience is going to be like life-changing in a lot of ways, and some bad and some really great. You know, and I imagine probably 8 of them will want to come back, or 10, you know.
Definitely some of them will come home. And when they come home, they're going to bring back not just their genetic perfectness, but so much diversity of thought, so many new skills and ideas, connections. that are going to only enhance the culture. So the culture will be changed forever from what the founders intended. But I feel like that's what procreation's about. Like the next generation should be different. They should be enhanced in some way. They shouldn't be just the same old thing. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
So they're evolving.
Yeah, this was a really, really great episode. It's just one of these like bedrock episodes that makes TNG so great. I could watch this episode over and over and over again. I love that it gave us a little bit of everything. It gave us some scientific stuff, right? Like Geordi had some solution to engineer, but it also gave like a human connection, like a real societal quandary that we had to like mull over. And I was like, it was the perfect amount. Not a single effing Klingon or Romulan decloaked in front of them and did that same tired old thing that they've done already a bunch of times. Like, this is just like bedrock TNG. I love this episode. How about you?
Same. Everything you said, ditto. Yes. I think this was like classic TNG. This is what makes TNG so great. These are the episodes that give me all the warm and fuzzies. That I maybe don't remember when I first think of when I think of the show. This is not an episode that's going to pop to mind, but it does add to that building inside my heart of just loving feelings for the show. It like adds a brick into that building of like, this is why.
This right here. And because this is such a good foundational episode and like sets such a great tone for TNG, it allows them that space to make those really awesome, memorable episodes. You can't really do that without having like a really strong standard. And this is one of those strong standards. So guys, thank you so much for listening along with our meandering discussion of this episode. Next week, we're breaking down season 5, episode 14, Conundrum. Can't wait for that. So stick with us and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.